Welcome to the Institution for Higher Learning in Common Law, where we train people not to be sheep. And now for your host, Professor Brad Parsons.
Thank you very much, Joseph.
All right.
Good evening. Last week we ended up by partially covering the Fourth Amendment, and this week we'll delve into it in more detail.
Yep. So when you cut him off at the pass, so to speak, and you start asking him questions, and you don't answer any questions except with a question, then you can kind of control that. But it'd be great to get the law in our transportation script. That's all I have.
There's one thing I'd like to add to that. There are certain things that you are required to tell a police officer when he pulls you over because you have been arrested. You're required to give him your name, your true name. You're required to tell him your address, and you're required to tell him your date of birth. Anything else, if you're smart, you'll just say, hey, I don't answer questions. Well, where are you going? I don't answer questions. Well, where have you been? I don't answer questions. What have you been doing? I don't answer questions. And just let it go with that. I mean, do it courteously, but there's a video on YouTube about a law professor talking about this very same thing, and it talks about how people who are completely innocent of anything can be wrapped up and warped and prosecuted for crimes that they didn't commit just because they opened their mouth. The other half of that is, if you think that you're going to outsmart this dumbass police officer, have another thing coming. He does this kind of thing all day long, and he may not appear to be too bright, but he's bright enough to recognize when he hears an incongruity in your statements. And when he finds you're starting to lie to him, his ears start to glow red, and and he goes after you. So the best thing to do is just not talk at all. Anything else? Okay. Let's go in conference mode again, lecture mode again, and we'll start the next. The amendment protects the people, you and I, against unreasonable searches and seizures, but not all searches and seizures. Let's examine the term unreasonable. Blacks defines it as irrational, foolish, unwise, absurd, silly, preposterous, senseless, stupid. I've omitted the citations. Not reasonable, immoderate, exorbitant, capricious, arbitrary, and confiscatory. The fact that a police officer thinks that you are doing something wrong, have done something wrong, are in possession of some sort of contraband or the fruits of a crime, does not give him the right to arrest you, search you, or seize your house, papers, and or your effects. If he wants to search or arrest you, he is required by this amendment to take his suspicions before a magistrate in a specified manner and obtain a warrant to seize or search and or seize. Police officers are taught that there are exceptions to the Constitution. Legislatures write statutes that condone exceptions to the Constitution. Here's one. A peace officer may arrest a person who he has reasonable cause to believe has committed a misdemeanor in his presence, unquote. And, quote, a peace officer may arrest a person who he has reasonable cause to believe has committed a felony, whether or not a felony has in fact been committed. There are many more. The above rights shall not be violated. Please take note that it doesn't state that the rights shall not be violated unless it says that they will not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. Blacks define probable cause as reasonable cause, having more evidence for than against. A reasonable ground for belief in a certain alleged facts. A set of probabilities grounded in the factual and practical considerations which govern the decisions of reasonable and prudent persons, and is more than mere suspicion, but less than the quantum of evidence required for conviction. An apparent state of facts found to exist upon reasonable inquiry, that is, inquiry that is given the case renders convenient and proper, which would induce a reasonably intelligent and prudent man to believe in a criminal case that the accused person had committed the crime charged, or in a civil case that the cause of action existed. I want to call attention, to break away from the script here a little bit, that in both of these cases where it talks about reasonable men, it also attaches the word prudent, and that's important. Arrest, search, and seizure. Reasonable grounds for belief that a person should be arrested or searched. The evidentiary criterion necessary to sustain an arrest or the issuance of an arrest search warrant. The definition goes on to state that if an officer develops reasonable cause, he may arrest. State versus Phillips, 67 Hawaii 536 at 696, Pacific 2nd 346 at 350. I believe that this is another case of it claiming exceptions to the Constitution. However, to give the devil his due, and after wearing a badge for 18 years, I know that a peace officer's job would be impossible to perform if he were made to obtain a warrant for every arrest he needed to make, even if we just included the common law violations like assault and battery, theft, etc. We the people would be the victims twice over by sustaining the injury and by seeing the perpetrators calmly walk away in the presence of the police. It's a real poser, and I don't have the answer. Supported by oath and affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. This tells us that an affidavit must be prepared, setting forth all of the officer's observations, facts, and testimony upon which he bases his suspicions that there is contraband, the fruits of the crime, the means used to commit a crime, and or describing the person to be arrested and setting forth the reasons that an arrest is justified. The person to be arrested does not have to be named, but he must be accurately described so as to exclude others. White male, 25 to 30 years old, 5'10" inches tall, 185 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, will not suffice. It's too general, and it would encompass too many people. The things to be searched for must also be particularly described, and only places in which those things might be found may be searched. For example, if stolen television sets with 60-inch screens were the object of the search, every room in the house could be searched. But a search in the dresser, desk, or cabinet drawers would not be proper. Neither would a body cavity search would be appropriate. On the other hand, if it was narcotics or gemstones being sought, there would be almost no place that would be exempt on the premises.